Hello, and welcome to 5-Minute Math. Today we are looking at the Algebra 1 concept of graphing exponential functions. This is standard A.9D in the great state of Texas, and we are using item number 49 of the Redesign Practice Online STAAR Test. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and take a moment to pause the video, work this problem out on your own, unpause it, and we will look at our answers together. So hopefully we recognize that this is an exponential function. And our giveaway should be the fact that we've got that x as that exponent right there. But unfortunately there's not really anything on our reference materials that gives us any information about it. We have information about factoring, properties of exponents, and then linear and quadratics, but nothing about exponential. So we need to bring this information into the STAAR test with us. So we need to find a statement that's true about this. Well, let's figure out what we know about exponential functions. First, let's take a look at our standard form. Y equals a times b to the x power. And both of those terms, the a and the b term, are going to be very helpful in describing what this graph would look like if we were to graph this. All right, so let's look at that a term. That a term could be multiple things depending on the context. Now, in this particular problem, right, there is no context. There's simply numbers, but sometimes there's a word problem. And it might talk about investing money or saving money, and you have a compound interest rate. So that's a term is going to be your principal. In more general terms, you could just call it your starting amount or your initial amount. So in a lot of these problems with exponential growth or decay, there's some amount that you're starting with, whether it be bacterial growth or population density or population growth or decay. It starts with something, and then it either gets bigger or gets smaller over so many weeks, months, years, whatever. That's that starting amount. But we could also, if there's no context at all, it's not a word problem or real life scenario, we can also call this a term our y-intercept, and that's going to be what's most helpful for us with this problem. So remember, your y-intercept is where your function crosses the y-axis or intercepts the y-axis when x equals 0. Because check this out. If I were to substitute in 0 for this, I'm going to substitute in that 0 for that x. So y equals a times b to the x becomes a times b to the 0. Anything to the 0 becomes 1. So it's a times 1. Which just means y equals a when x equals 0. So that means this 35 is going to be our y-intercept. That's extremely helpful. So y-intercept is going to be 35. And so take a look at a right here. The y-intercept of the function is 0, 35. Now, remember, x is 0, so that y-intercept actually is the y-coordinate. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So I'm thinking a looks pretty good, but we just talked about the a term. Let's talk about the b term and then look at b, c, and d as our answer selections. Our b term is going to be our rate. And it is a growth rate. If it is greater than 1, that 1.4 is greater than 1, so it's a growth rate. It is a decay rate if it is less than 1. And the graphs look certain ways. So if it is a growth rate, which is what we have here, greater than 1, that means it's going to, if we were to graph it, kind of start right here and then kind of slope up. It increases. Whereas a decay rate less than 1 is going to do the opposite. It's going to start here and then kind of slope down and bring it down like that. So we know that it is a growth rate. And so take a look at this. We can talk about c right here. The graph of the function is decreasing, right? That's saying it's a decay rate. We know that's incorrect because it is 1.4. It is a growth rate. The asymptote is not going to be y equals. The asymptote is always going to be that x-axis unless they do something to shift it up or down. And there is no x-intercept because the x-axis is your asymptote. It never reaches it. It gets closer. So yeah, our best answer is going to be A.